that Reverend Steve gave, what is forgiveness but a little willingness that truth be true? What can remain unhealed and broken from the unity which holds all things within itself? There is no sin, and every miracle is possible the instant the Son of God receives his wishes and the will of God are one. And I consider this a little willingness. This willing part is to step aside and to allow the Holy Spirit to work through me, to let go of control. I'm going to give a few examples of how that has played out in my life, some of them that has somewhat stood out to me. And Jesus said, God sent me to you, so I will send you to others, and I will go to you with them, and we will teach them peace and union. Some years ago, right after my first read through A Course in Miracles, my first study from beginning to end, I had found myself on workman's comp. Just so happens I had some spare time. And while I was in physical therapy and other things, I was starting to feel better. And so I joined this group that went out in Modesto, out on some of the streets, and served breakfast and brought clothing. We went to a park. We made burritos and served beans and fruit, just all sorts of stuff. And then we went to a place in Modesto known as 9th Street. A lot of hotels, a lot of people coming and going. And most of them are drug addicts and a few other things. I'm not judging. I'm just saying they're kind of like have found they're just living their lives on a moment-by-moment basis and providing for their needs as they are, as they need them. And anyway, so I went with this group of people quite often. And this one day I just felt compelled just to run around all these hotels and knock on the door and ask them if they would like to come get breakfast. And some people didn't answer. A few would answer and say thank you, and they'd come out. This one lady answered the door, and she opened it a little bit. And I said, hey, would you like to come get breakfast? We got it right across the street, and we also have some clothing. And she said, how much does it cost? And I said, oh, it's free. And she goes, oh, I don't know. And I can, she had the door open enough where I could see there was a table, and she had a gentleman friend. And it looks like maybe they were busy doing up some drugs, pretty much. They were doing what they needed to do. And anyway, so I asked her, I go, why don't is it okay, can I bring you breakfast? And she's, oh yeah, So I ran across the street, and I was so happy, and I got their breakfasts together, and I took them back over to him. And she answers the door, and I said, we got some coffee across the street. Whenever you're ready, you can come over and get some. And so I completely forgot about him. I was off doing something else, and I turned around, and there she was, standing there getting some coffee. And I walked over to her, and she had this beauty about her, this like a glow. It was like I felt as though I was looking into the face of Christ. And I told her, I used to do drugs. She's like, you? No, you. Because I surely didn't look it at the time. And I showed her, that I've got a few scars. And she just looked at me, and a look came over her face, and it was as if she saw hope in me. She saw the hope that for her in me right at that moment, just that holy instant, with me having that little willingness to go out there and say, hey, I've been there. I've been there. And after a little while, I saw her over talking to the pastor. We had a pastor that led this group, a really wonderful gentleman. And I knew at that point that was receiving what she needed. And she had already received it because the healing had already occurred. It had all already happened right at that moment when her and I looked at each other, and I saw the Christ in her, and it was so beautiful. And there was this other time, but first let me read the quote. The world I look upon, I begin to see what my illusions about myself had kept hidden. I begin to understand the holiness of all living things, including myself, and their oneness with me. Now this one is kind of interesting. Most of my experiences happen at my work because I spend more time at work than I do any place else other than home, and usually there I'm just probably trying to get something to eat and get to bed. But I was at work, and I worked at a place in Livermore where we built computers at the time for all the big name industry, IBM, Compaq, Toshiba, and all of them. And we had a pretty good sized group of people that in the configuration center, we called it that, they configured the computers, built them, we take an empty box and just build it from start to finish. There's quite a few people in there, and at the time I was a system administrator, so I supported all the internal computers and servers. I was in the middle of working, and I just got this feeling, get up. Okay, so I get up, and I walk out, and I walk around, I walk down a hall, and I felt as though I was being somewhat directed. And I walked over a conveyor belt, and next thing I know, I'm standing in front of this gentleman that was working. He was a technician. And I look at him and I go, Cristo de llama. Okay. I don't know Spanish at all. And he looks at me and he says, what did you say? And I said, Cristo de llama. And he goes, I go, what does it mean? And he goes, well, it means, it means Christ is calling. And I'm just going to tell you, I did look it up. It would be Christ te esta llamar. And please excuse the way I pronounce that, but so it's pretty close, but it wasn't quite. But the thing is that what I didn't know at the time was that this brother was somewhat on the fence of going into seminary. He wanted to be a priest. And he had just started there. He hadn't been there very long. And really, I'd seen him maybe once or twice and said, hi, how you doing, stuff like that. But, all of a sudden, I'm standing in front of some guy trying to speak Spanish. But it was what he needed to hear at that time. He needed to hear that, and this is how I found out. A week or so later, I'm like, hey, where did, honestly, I don't even recall his name, but I could still see him standing there. Yeah, and this guy goes, oh, he joined the seminary. He's going to become a priest. And evidently, something that you had said kind of helped him along with that. And I was like, okay. So this was a prime example of a little willingness just to step out of my way to allow the Holy Spirit to work through me to reach his children. And I feel that this brother had put that question out, and he was waiting to find out, because he didn't know. He was kind of, he didn't know for sure. And he was waiting, and I'd come along with his answer, and his answer was to go to seminary. And this one, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom? Although I have to say, I might need to skip over that one, but this is my favorite one, so I'll tell it to you really fast. This is one of those complete directions where the Holy Spirit told me afterwards, I go, what was the point of that? And he says, I'm teaching you to tie your shoes. You remember tying your shoes? When you learn how to tie them, you tried it over and over and over again, and somebody was helping you, and they were showing you, and it seemed so complex. I was at work. I was setting up a executive's computer. He just moved offices, and I was moving computer equipment and doing cables and making it look all nice for him. And right in the middle of that, I heard, pick up that box. And I had a box in there, and there was a box sitting over there. I'm like, oh, what? Yeah, pick up the box. So I went and picked up the box. Go out the door. I walked out the door. And then, get that box too. What, that one right there? Yeah, get that box. So I get this box, and I'm hearing, it's not an audible, but it's kind of an internal. I was following directions of kind of like an unaudible voice, but yet it was, I can feel it and hear it internally, not externally. So I get the box, and it just so happens to fit in this other box perfectly, but it was kind of large, so I was carrying these boxes, and I didn't really want to take them that far. I had no idea where I was going. And it's like, walk out the door, so I have to walk through this big office and out this door. So I'm holding boxes, opening the door, and then I hear, go to the stairs. There's stairs right here, and there's stairs way over there. I was ready to go right down these stairs, and I thought, what am I going to go down there for? Then I hear, no, the other stairs. Oh, these stairs over here. Oh, that's where I'm going to set them down. No. I was ready already. So I went around, and I went around the stairwell, and then I hear right there. And right at this time, way down the hall, one of my coworkers stops out of the break room and says, Sharon, where are you going with those boxes? And I said, I'm bringing them to you. And she's like, what'd you say? I go, yeah, I am. I'm bringing them to you. And she started laughing. And I brought them to her and set them down. I asked her, would she want them? And I set them down. And then I later asked the Holy Spirit, and he told me that he was teaching me how to tie my shoes. This last one is also happened at work. And while he believes he is in a body, however, man can choose between loveliness, miraculous channels of expression. Now, this one here is kind of an interesting one. This happened not very long ago. I was at work, and this gentleman was standing there, which I hadn't seen in a while. He was at a distribution center, so I don't really go there very often. And I looked at him, and I go, hi, how you doing? And he goes, oh, I'm great. I'm getting ready to retire today. Today's my last day. And I'm like, oh, okay. So later on, I was leaving, and I was getting in my car, and I see him there, and I go, so enjoy your retirement. Now you can go back to doing what you were doing before you started working here. And it was something like that. I don't recall the exact words. And he goes, what did you say? Yeah. I go, now you can go back to doing what you used to do before you started working here. And he walked a little bit closer to me, and he gets a smile on his face, and he kind of tilts his head a little, and he goes, no, I think I'm going to spend time with my family and friends. We had some exchange about that, and I felt this, I felt this closeness, like a joining with him. And it was as if we were standing at that moment in the like the holiest place on earth. And I felt that this connection with this man, like we had experienced this healing that is not necessarily easy to explain. But I know that he chose love. Right then, he didn't want to go back to doing what he used to do before he started working there. He chose, right at that moment, he chose love. He chose his family and his friends. And basically, this brother, a few weeks later, was arrested, and his name's Joe. I'll tell you that much. He was arrested, and he is currently being charged with 13 murders and 50 rapes, and he is known as the Golden State Killer. But I feel at that moment, when he and I had this exchange, this talk, which I had no idea, and why did I even say go back to doing, because literally he stopped doing it about the time he started working at the employer that he and I both share, is that that healing, that darkness within all of us. It's a darkness. He was playing it out, but it's one that we all share because, in a sense, we've all, whether we admit it or not, we have been we've had that anger. And Jesus says, if you think it, you've already done it. Not to feel bad about it, but to allow it to heal, to bring it to the light, and allow that darkness to dissipate. And that is what I feel happened in that time with our brother. And I pray for him. He is in he's in jail, and he is yet to be tried, but he's charged. But he is wholly innocent to me, and I see him as a brother and a child of God. And right, I love him. I do not hold him guilty at all of anything. So the world will, and he will probably spend the rest of his time in jail. But there was a reason for all that. There was a reason for everything. We all already know there are no accidents. And they come quickly to the living temple, where a home for them has been set up. There is no place in heaven holier, and they have come to dwell within the temple offered them, be their resting place as well as yours. What hatred has released to love becomes the brightest light in heaven's radiance, and all the lights in heaven brighter grow in gratitude for what has been restored. I was just wondering, does anybody have any questions? I was, before I wrapped up, because I always have at least one more thing to say. Well, child of God, forgive me now. I have come to take you home with me. And as we go, the world and all that is in it goes with us on our way to God. Thank you very much.